Well, good morning and welcome to this week's brief news from Lanzarote, from your favourite island. Thank you for joining us. Now, our first story this week is one of chaos at the airport. And unfortunately, we had a Ryanair flight that was due out to Knock this week where there was only one immigration officer on passport control instead of the two as there should have been. And as a result of the slow speed at which he was able to process everybody, 60 passengers were left behind when the aircraft decided that they had to get going according to their schedule and leave those passengers behind in the immigration area. It's not good enough. It really should not be happening. There is a denuncia that has gone in against the police department that looks after that, and hopefully something will be done about it to make sure it doesn't happen again. It's really, really frustrating because at a time when the airport, as we'll find out in a minute, is super busy and could have been predicted so, this should all be happening very smoothly now. So on behalf of the island, huge apologies to those 60 passengers, and I hope you were able to get home eventually without any issue. A couple of people have said to me, but the island are in the European Union, so why are people having to go through passport control? That's because Ireland, whilst being a member of the EU, is not part of the Schengen zone, which is the sort of borderless zone within the EU. But while we're talking about the airport, we had a historic record month in August with just under 800,000 people transiting through the airport. That's a huge, huge number. And I mean, if you multiply that out, it comes close to 10 million a year. And if you think the airport was originally built for 6 million people per year, you can see how stretched everything has been at Lanzarote Airport this summer. Things have calmed down a little bit now. A lot of people are asking me to try and predict how long it's going to take them to go through passport control as we lead up to the entry of the EES system. It's impossible to say, and I mean, if you go onto social media, you'll only see the stories of people who've been held up, because those who haven't been held up are just cracking on and enjoying their holidays. We've been doing a kind of informal survey with our car hire clients and our holiday clients, and most are saying it's not really too big of a deal getting through anywhere between half an hour and 1 hour through passport control on entry into Lanzarote. But unfortunately, if you arrive at the same time as, let's say, 3 or 4 other flights, you may well have a longer wait than that. And again, I can only apologise on behalf of the island, but hopefully once we get this new EES system up and running in November, things will calm down. And they should calm down now anyway, because the overall numbers coming in and out are starting to fall to the more kind of steady winter mode at the moment. I'm slightly nervous about October half term, when the island is really, really busy again. Anecdotally, I drive past the airport probably 3 or 4 times every week, and I always glance across and see what's on the apron and which aircraft are on the air bridges. And I've never known it so busy. Whatever day, whatever time of day I've been going by over the last few weeks, all the air bridges are full, and the apron is also full of aircraft where people are having to be bussed to and from it. So as I say, fingers crossed things will calm down. I can't give you a prediction. I just hope it works out well for you. We have some interesting news this week that the number of electric cars on the islands, that's across the Canaries as a whole, has quadrupled in the last 4 years. As you probably expect, there are some quite good government incentives for battery electric vehicles here. Both our cars are electric, so you know, we're on that curve, if you like. The Canaries are they lend themselves so well to BEVs because you can't really go very far. You know, the furthest distance I can go from my house is to Playa Blanca and back, and that's only about 150, 160 kilometres. So nobody has range anxiety here, and that's why we're buying them in droves. It was interesting this week to see that a short movie called Kraken Mar which is produced by a local madrileño actually, but who's lived in Lanzarote for many years, is being shown at the prestigious Brooklyn Sci-Fi Festival this week, and it's in the Best Live Action Short Film category. The reason it's interesting is the whole thing was shot on the island by Paco Garcia, and so it's a good way to showcase what the island has. It's interesting, I mean, we've travelled quite a lot in the States, and whenever you say to anyone we live in Lanzarote, they have no idea where that is, and most people don't even know about the Canary Islands, so you kind of end up having this conversation where you're saying, well, it's a small group of islands owned by Spain, but 1,000 kilometres from Spain and only 100 kilometres from the coast of Saharan Africa. We've also had good news on the economic front this week. Inflation in Spain has fallen to 2.3%, and that's been falling steadily now since the end of the pandemic. And the Spanish economy is in very good health at the moment, and long may that continue. Now, the weather this summer has been pretty weird. Those of you who follow our newsletter and the website and the Facebook page regularly will know that last winter was absolutely epic. We've lived here for 24 years, and last winter was the best by miles. It was hot, it was sunny every single day, the winds were relatively light, and we had very little rain, which isn't good for the island, but it is good certainly for tourists visiting here. But the summer's been a bit duff, really. We've had very strong winds and too much cloud around. Sure enough, the cloud has burned off every day by sort of early afternoon, but it's not been a great summer. And we had news this week that the average temperature in the months of June, July and August was actually 1.5 degrees lower on the same period last year. And talking about winds, we had a big waves alert from the weather department this week on Thursday, which started at 7 a.m. on Thursday, and a combination of strong winds and high tides created some really big waves around the coast, and it was quite spectacular. It's now all calmed down actually, and we've gone into in the last couple of days very typical September weather, which is light winds and beautiful blue skies, which I'm looking at behind me. I loved this next story, and it's the Cabildo are creating what they call an awareness strategy around ethical tourism. Now, you'll know we've had some quite big issues with unethical tourism here over the last few months. People daubing murals, tourists daubing murals on abandoned properties. People going off the beaten paths in Timman Fire and sort of climbing the Pecan Mountains and sliding down them, taking selfies in the most ridiculous and dangerous situations. And this is really in response to those issues. Oh, the one I forgot, of course, was the guys who decided to take a swim in the lagoon at Jameos del Agua. So this is in response to those issues, and it's basically a 10-point charter for ethical tourism, and it's beautifully worded. I've only seen the Spanish so far, but I've done a translation of it and tried to keep the feel of it on the website. So visit lanzaroteinformation.co.uk and you'll see the article in one of the earliest pages of the website. It is all driven by a QR code, which you'll see in various points of the island. The first totem, as they call it, has been installed at the airport, and as you come into the airport you'll be able to click this QR code and read these 10 commandments for ethical tourism. And I mean, they're all common sense. They talk about things like not straying from the path, not leaving rubbish around, saving water because we don't have any natural water here. And it ends beautifully actually, because, and I'm just paraphrasing this now from memory, but the last commandment, the 10th of them, is you may be someone who claps your hands when your aircraft lands for the start of your holiday, but how about becoming the sort of person who is clapped by the inhabitants of the island when you leave here for your great behaviour? And I thought that was quite nice. So look for that, and do have a read of it, please. There was quite a big earthquake in Gran Canaria this week. Actually off the coast, about 20 kilometres off the coast of Gran Canaria, but it was the biggest earthquake they'd felt on the island in 60 years. And I've spoken to friends over there, and they certainly were talking about the house moving. No damage was caused, fortunately. The epicenter, as I say, was 21 miles off the coast and 20 odd miles deep. So everything's monitored here very carefully, but it did cause a few people a bit of a scare. And one person I spoke to said they thought it was them. They felt the house was moving, and they thought they were having some sort of balance episode, and then they realised it was the whole house moving. But anyway, that seems to have settled down now. There are lots of smaller tremors afterwards, but everything's fine now over in Gran Canaria. This is the point at which I remind you, please, to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already done so. And please give it a like if you're enjoying this video. You know where the button is, or is it probably that way on your screen? But anyway, and as I've said many times before, we read every single comment that you post. So if you've got a question or any feedback you want to give us, please leave a comment below, and I'll be very, very happy to answer it for you if I know the answer, and generally I do. I love this next story about the welcome party for one of Lanzarote's most prolific visitors. And this is a British guy called Eric Wilson. He's a retired estate agent from Romford in the UK. And he arrived on the island for his 90th stay at Dreams in Playa Blanca. And he was welcomed by all the staff there. He was escorted to his usual room, which I gather is room 1296. No, it's 1256. I've just read it on my iPad below here. And he's been visiting the island since 1989. But to have made 90 stays in the same hotel is some going. And hopefully the hotel will give him a big discount or even write his bill off this time. Now, this is relevant really to British residents living on the island, but Spain now has a new ambassador. His name is Sir Alex Ellis. And he's taken up the post and will be based in Madrid and will be the liaison for British people living in Spain and throughout the Canaries, and also for tourists from the UK visiting Spain and or the Canaries. I just want to say a brief word for his predecessor, Hugh Elliott, who I think has done an absolutely fantastic job. He came into it in 2019 and immediately had to deal with the pandemic. And also had to deal with the very troubled waters of Brexit. And I just thought Hugh did a really, really good job. For the first time since we've been running Lanzarote Information, we had really good, relevant, interesting and useful content on a weekly basis, particularly through the pandemic, from the British Embassy to pass on to British residents living here in Lanzarote. So I think he did a cracking job. It's not been announced what he's going to be doing yet, but I suspect he's going to become a bit of a star of the British diplomatic service in the future. But I don't think he'll drop his very close relationship with Spain. His wife is Spanish and his two children were born while he was the ambassador in Madrid, so they're born in Spain. So anyway, best wishes to Hugh and good luck to the new ambassador, Sir Alex Ellis. Now, I've long suspected this was the case, but we had the data to prove it, if you like, this week. And that is that tourism growth in the Canaries over the last few years has been massively driven by the number of privately owned tourist rentals, viviendas vacacionales on the islands. And the stats we had this week were really interesting, and they were talking about the growth in tourism across the Canaries in the first 7 months of this year versus the first 7 months of 2023. Now, in that time, stays in hotels only increased by 0.35%. So that's hotels and apartment complexes, under 1% growth, but the overall growth was actually 14%. So the difference has come from that private vacation rental sector. And as I said, I think everyone knew that instinctively, but it was really interesting to see how big their part of the impact on increased tourism was here in the Canaries. And while we're talking about those, the new letting law hits the Canarian Parliament at the end of this month, at the end of September. We've seen the proposed draft of it, And then there was a whole period of what they call citizen consultation, where people's ideas, objections, and everything else were taken on board, and it was redrafted and is now, according to the sponsor, Jessica de Leon, ready to go before the Canarian Parliament. And as I say, that will happen at the end of this month. A lot of the local newspapers are saying they don't think it'll get through, but they don't say why. They just say they don't think it will get through. So we'll have to see what happens. I mean, the way the law works here is very similar to most countries in that if it doesn't get a majority vote, people will propose amendments to it, and then it will come back to Parliament again, hopefully with the new amendments in it. But I'll keep you posted on that. We'll see what's going to happen. It's been a very long time coming, and for sure we need some more regulation in this sector. So I've got my fingers crossed that if it doesn't go through, at least it's amended in the right way and eventually does. Now, many of you will know that the road that runs from the Playa Blanca main road to El Golfo through Los Hervideros has been closed for ages, years actually, and that was because there was a sinkhole in the road, and where the foundation of the road had been eroded by the ocean. It's been a real problem, and what they found when they started investigating, and one of the reasons it's taken so long, is it's not just in the place where the road has collapsed. There are several other areas where the erosion is about to collapse the road. So, you know, rather than just fixing that one bit, they're having to fix a section which is nearly 2 kilometres long by putting, or the project is to put big columns down into the soil so that the road, whilst it still remains at road level, if that makes sense, it's supported in the way that a flyover might be as well. I'm going to run an image across which shows the artist's impression of what they are proposing to do, and I love the look of it because there is, as well as the road, there is a whole section which looks like it's for cyclists and pedestrians only, where you'll be able to walk 2.1 kilometres along, or cycle 2.1 kilometres along that whole coastline and right over where the blowholes are. So I think if that project comes to fruition, and I hope it does, it's going to be absolutely fantastic. I'll keep you posted. And finally, the kids are back at school this week. They went back on Monday. The summer holidays here are very long. They're almost 3 months long. So I always think it must be very hard for the children to get back into the swing of school and discipline after spending almost 3 months kind of, you know, playing on the beach and having all their free time. But they're back at school now. School hours here are a bit different to many Northern European countries. They start at 8 o'clock in the morning and they finish at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I like having them back because the two schools are just up the road from our house in our village, and I quite enjoy hearing their kind of excited chatter as they're walking up in the morning, and even more excited chatter as they're heading home in the afternoons for their lunches. But they're back now. And once again, thank you so much for watching this video. We really appreciate every view. We appreciate every like and every subscriber. We set out earlier this year to try and grow our YouTube channel to make it more useful to you, and I hope we're doing a good job of that. Certainly, I really appreciate the numbers we see viewing these videos now. So that's it for now. Have a great weekend, and bye for now.